is like you start wherever you are. You can be feeling rage, incredible lust, fear, sadness, grief, whatever it is. And you simply bring a measure of kindly equanimity to that, whatever is up, not pushing and pulling at it. Allow it to do its thing, held in this vast emptiness of mind. And then it will change like anything else. Now something else may appear, maybe a greater fear or a more primal fear or something. But the tracing back the radiance that Chenul talked about is that whatever appears, you're just with it with as much equanimity as you can. Over time, you have the confidence that it changes, dissolves, moves. Something else comes. Something else comes after that. But eventually, tracing your experience, it opens into a radiant, knowing, full emptiness. It's not a dull, scary, weird emptiness. It's a full, kind of heartfelt emptiness. It has a radiance, it has a brightness to it. So that was his teaching, this, okay, let's sit down and we'll trace back the radiance. And of course, on some days, you don't get anywhere. You know, it doesn't happen, it doesn't open, the conditions are too weird and you're too upset or whatever, and it just doesn't break through. But through practice and the cultivation of equanimity, cultivation of kindness, it happens without efforting. So I'll read you just a few things from Chenul. And he also talks about two other aspects of his teaching. He talked about sudden awakening and gradual cultivation. Those were two of his important themes. And so he gets a question from a student. You've said that this twofold approach of sudden awakening and gradual cultivation is the track followed by thousands of saints. But if awakening is really sudden awakening, what need is there for gradual cultivation? And if cultivation means gradual cultivation, how can you speak of sudden awakening? We hope that you will expound further on these two ideas of sudden and gradual and resolve our remaining doubts. And so Chenul says, first, let me take sudden awakening. When the ordinary person is deluded, they assume that the four great elements are his body and that the false thoughts are his mind. They do not know that their own nature is the true Dharma body. They do not know that their own numinous, radiant awareness is the true Buddha. They look for the Buddha outside the mind. While he is thus wandering aimlessly, the entrance to the road might by chance be pointed out by a wise advisor. If in one thought he then follows back the light of his mind to the source and sees his own original nature, he will discover that the ground of his nature is innately free of defilement, and that he himself is originally endowed with the wisdom nature which is not a hair's breadth different from that of all the Buddhas. Hence, it is called sudden awakening. You know, some people talk about having those moments, and I think we probably all have had those moments where everything gets clear. We understand for a moment. The clouds clear away. We feel the interdependence. Our heart is wide open. And then that kind of disappears again. So sudden awakening in Zen tradition called Satori, when all of a sudden there's that clarity. Some people, some modern teachers talk about their sudden awakenings. I think Eckhart Tolle talks about his, where he's kind of sitting on a bench and all of a sudden he's never been the same. Other people make those claims also. It has not been my personal experience that having those moments then results in resting in that space forever. And then he goes on to talk about the value of gradual cultivation. Next, let us consider gradual cultivation. Although he has awakened to the fact that his original nature is no different from that of the Buddhas, the beginningless habit energies are extremely difficult to remove suddenly, and so he must continue to cultivate while relying on this awakening. Through this gradual permeation, his endeavors reach completion. He constantly nurtures the sacred embryo, and after a long time, he becomes a saint. Hence, it is called gradual cultivation. This process can be compared to the maturation of a child. From the day of its birth, a baby is endowed with all the sense organs, just like everyone else, but its strength is not yet fully developed. It is only after many months and years that it will finally become an adult. So it's like those little sudden awakenings, they kind of help our perspective because we then know something. We've had a direct experience. Jimi Hendrix always used to ask us, "Are you experienced?" Now, Jimmy was probably talking about some other things, but he also was talking about this experience of connection opening, however you got there. And so that perspective, when there are those moments, it kind of boosts it up a little bit. Sudden awakening, gradual cultivation. And this tracing back the radiance, in modern parlance, you'll hear from a lot of meditation teachers. We teach it here. You hear it when you're on retreats, using that acronym RAIN, R-A-I-N. I won't go into great detail, but it's simply a way of reminding how to, or one way to approach experience. First, can we recognize it? The R. I also like, can we be receptive of it? You know, we recognize. And then the A. Can we allow it? Can we accept it? And those are not easy things. We often want to turn away. We want to deny, repress, especially if it's challenging. So in cultivating a contemplative practice, at least there's the intention to turn toward and face our experience. We may not be able to do it very well on a given day. Some days we might be fully there. Oh, I can do this. But other days, well, I have the intention, but I don't think I'm going to go there, or I just don't, maybe I've got a 30% ability to be with it, or 50, or 2, So, and then the I, very simply, is investigate. But it's investigate with kindness. Intimacy maybe is a better word. Have some intimacy, develop some intimacy with it, with kindness. And that's more than just thinking about it. I mean, there may be insights that pop up, but that's really embodying it. If we're feeling fear or joy or love or sadness, to come out of the head and feel it in the body fully. Really notice what it's like. Feel it, watch it change. We're getting a real up-close dose of what happens in nature. Nothing stands still, moving all the time. Our emotions, our thoughts, our sensations, That's the deal. So we're watching that. Allows us to be more in step with nature, not be so freaked out by things changing, by our aging, by our illness, by stuff that happens by virtue of being born, losses, etc. So, and then the N, that's non-identification, or the kind of falling into that natural radiance. And you don't have to do anything. You know, if we're just aware of what's happening, if we're accepting of it in some way, if we develop some intimacy, we're not as identified with it. You know, we're not lost in it so much. And that's where the freedom, the ease is felt. That's the kind of transformation in small moments or in long periods of time. There's a sutta that I particularly like, and I know we've used it here teaching before. It's known as Bahia of the bark cloth. Bark, not like bark like a dog, but bark off a tree. And so the backstory on Bahia, which is not in the sutta, but it shows up in other commentaries and other writings. And if the real backstory, or the mystical backstory, the myth of Bahia, is that he was a hardcore practitioner and lived in the time of earlier Buddhas, and he had a cadre of friends, and they would practice austerities and try to figure out how to kind of open completely. And there was 5 or 6, I think there was 5 of them, and he was the only one who didn't get enlightened. So, but he was a good guy and practiced hard, and so he was reborn numerous times in these heaven realms where everything is so pleasant, and a heaven realm goes on for thousands and thousands of years as we know them, and it's mostly all pleasure, so you never think about practicing. You don't make a lot of progress. You're having a good time, but then there's still old age, sickness, death, loss, all that happens, and so then you get born again and again, and it's just hard to practice there. It's much easier on earth, where it's like we get the whole mix. We get all these joys and beauty and this fabulous place we're born into, and then people are dying on us, and we're getting sick, and we're getting old, and like, what's going on here? But it's a time to really, well, let me try to figure this out. So anyway, Bahia is in these heaven realms. He gets born into India in a lifetime, but he's not really practicing yet. And he's a merchant, and he's on a ship, and he's on his way from the coast of India to Burma, and he's got all these goods and stuff. And there's a storm, and it sinks. He grabs onto a piece of the mast or something and floats to shore. His clothes are gone off him. Everything is lost. He's just lying there on this deserted beach. And so, being a modest fellow, he wants to go look for, there must be people living around here. So he makes out of bark that he finds, pieces of bark, and some vines, he makes some clothes that are made out of bark, Bahia of the bark cloth. So he shows up in a village, and people mistake him for a wandering sadhu, a holy man, but he's really not. But he kind of likes this. You know, instead of like, look, I've lost everything, I'm kind of a homeless guy, you know, he's now this spiritual guy. And so people start treating him like this, and he's getting into it. And they give him food, and they give him shelter, and, you know, they come to him, and he tells them things, platitudes or whatever, and they like it. And so he's got this whole cult thing going on. And so as the story goes, he's there ensconced in this village, and life is pretty good. And one of his, there's two ways that you hear the story. One is that it's a relative of his from past life that comes to visit him. And she's in a form of a deva, kind of a angelic figure. And the other is, it's one of his buddies that he was practicing with, who really is in some other realm that sees that he's involved in this ruse, basically. And so it kind of goes like this. He's visited, this is from the Suta. On arrival, said to him, "You, Bahia, are neither an arhat, nor have you entered the path of arhatship." Now, arhat is like an enlightened being, and so he's getting called out. "You don't even have the practice whereby you would become an arhat or enter the path of arhatship." And so Bahia, humbled a little bit, says, well, who in this world with its devas, its kind of angels and angelic beings, are arhats or have entered the path of arhatship? And so the friend says, "Bahia, there is a city in the northern country named Savatthi. There the Blessed One, an arhat, rightly self-awakened, is living now. He truly is an arhat and teaches the Dhamma leading to arhatship." So Bahia, feeling chastened by this being that he was visited with, starts walking, and it's about 400 miles from where he landed to this town, Savatthi. So he gets there looking for this person. So, and they say, well, this Blessed One is staying in Jeta's grove. There's a kind of a monastery, not so much a monastery, but they're camped. These monks and nuns are camped in the woods there. So he goes up there, and a large number of monks were doing walking meditation in the open air. He went to them on arrival and said, "Where, venerable sirs, is the Blessed One, the Arhat, rightly self-awakened? Where is he now staying? I want to see the Blessed One, the Arhat." And then they said, well, the Blessed One has gone into town for alms. Then Bahia, hurriedly leaving Jeta's grove and entering Savatthi, saw the Blessed One going for alms. Serene, he was inspiring, calming, his senses were at peace, his mind at peace, having attained the utmost tranquility and poise. And so seeing him, Bahia approached, and he threw himself down with his head on the Blessed One's feet and said, "Teach me the Dhamma, O Blessed One, teach me the Dhamma. Oh, well gone, that will be for my long-term welfare and bliss." When this was said, the Blessed One said to him, This isn't the time, Bahia. We've entered the town for alms. We're on an alms round." So he didn't want to take no. So he asked him for the second time. "But it is hard to know, Blessed One, for sure what dangers there may be for the Blessed One's life, or what dangers there may be for mine. Teach me the Dhamma, O Blessed One. Teach me the Dhamma, O well gone. O one well gone." That means one opened and enlightened. "That will be for my long-term welfare and bliss." And so, for the second time, the Buddha said, "Look, we're on the alms round. No can do. Come back later." He probably didn't say it like that, but so the third time seems to be always the charm in mythology. If you ask 3 times, you get rewarded. So Bahia says, "But it is hard to know for sure what dangers there may be for the Blessed One's life, or what dangers there may be for mine. Teach me now the Dhamma, O Blessed One, please." So Buddha stops. "Then, Bahia, you should train yourself thus." This is related to the practice that we did earlier. "In reference to the seen, there will only be the seen. In reference to the heard, only the heard. In reference to the sensed, only the sensed. In reference to the cognized, only the cognized. That is how you should train yourself. when for you there will be only the seen in reference to the seen, only the heard in reference to the heard, only the sensed in reference to the sensed, only the cognized in reference to the cognized, then Bahia. There is no you in connection with that. When there is no you in connection with that, there is no you there. When there is no you there, you are neither here nor yonder nor between the two. This, just this, is the end of stress. No inside, no outside. Just phenomena. No separation, no boundary. So, Bahia is like struck by this. And this is actually, Bahia is one of the people who has enlightenment maybe faster than anybody else in all the suttas. Of course, he had been practicing many lifetimes, but these words just cracked him open. But unfortunately, shortly thereafter, Bahia was attacked and killed by a cow. Now, some of the commentaries say this was an enemy from an old life, but the cow was with a calf. He probably got in the way. Something happened. All right. So then, after all the monks and nuns had done their alms round, the Buddha saw that Bahia had died. And on seeing him, he said to the monks, "Take Bahia's body, monks, and placing it on a litter, and carry it away, cremate it, and build a memorial. Your companion in the holy life has died." And they responded, "As you say, Lord." You know, the monks, placing Bahia's body on a litter, carrying it away, cremating it, and building him a memorial. And they went later and sat back down. And on arrival, having bowed down to the Buddha, sat at the side, and they said to him, "Bahia's body has been cremated. His memorial has been built. What is his destination? What is his future state?" "Monks, Bahia of the bark cloth was wise. He practiced the Dhamma in accordance with the Dhamma. Bahia of the bark cloth, monks, is totally unbound." And on realizing the significance of that, the Blessed One on the occasion exclaimed, "Where water, earth, fire, and wind have no footing, there the stars do not shine, the sun isn't visible, there the moon doesn't appear, there darkness is not found. And when a sage, a Brahmin, through sagacity, has realized this for himself, then from form and formless, from bliss and pain, he is freed." So, just the seen, just the heard, that's all. So I actually want to finish with a short poem by Rick Fields, who's a Zen teacher, which kind of points that direction. And it's called "The Very Short Sutta on the Meeting of the Buddha and the Goddess" by Rick Fields. And he says, "Thus I have made up. Once the Buddha was walking along the forest path in the oak grove at Ojai, California, of course, walking without arriving anywhere or having any thought of arriving or not arriving, and lotuses shining with the morning dew miraculously appeared under every step, soft as silk beneath the toes of the Buddha. When suddenly, out of the turquoise sky, dancing in front of his half-shut inward-looking eyes, shimmering like a rainbow or a spider's web, transparent as the dew on a lotus flower, the goddess appeared, quivering like a hummingbird in the air before him. She, for she was surely a she, as the Buddha could clearly see with his eye of discriminating awareness, wisdom, was mostly red in color, though when the light shifted, she flashed like a rainbow. She was naked except for the usual flower ornaments goddesses wear. Her long hair was deep blue, her two eyes fathomless pits of space, and her third eye a bloodshot ring of fire. The Buddha folded his hands together and greeted the goddess thus: "O goddess, why are you blocking my path? Before I saw you, I was happily going nowhere. Now I'm not sure where to go." "You can go around me," said the goddess, twirling on her heels like a bird darting away, but just a little away. "Or you can come after me. This is my forest too. You can't pretend I'm not here." With that, the Buddha sat supple as a snake, solid as a rock, beneath a bo tree that sprang full-leaved to shade him. "Perhaps we should have a chat," he said. "After years of arduous practice, at the time of the morning star, I penetrated reality, and now—" "Not so fast, Buddha," said the goddess. "I am reality." The earth stood still, the oceans paused, the wind itself listened. 1,000 arhants, bodhisattvas, and dakinis magically appeared to hear what would happen in the conversation. "I know I take my life in my hands," said the Buddha, "but I am known as the fearless one, so here goes." And he and the goddess, without further words, exchanged glances. Light rays like sunbeams shot forth so bright that even Sariputra, the all-seeing one of the Buddha's great devotees, disciples, and friends, had to turn away. And then they exchanged thoughts, and the illumination was as bright as a diamond candle. And then they exchanged mind, and there was a great silence as vast as the universe that contains everything. And then they exchanged bodies and clothes, and the Buddha arose as the goddess, and the goddess arose as the Buddha, and so on, back and forth for 100,000 kalapas. A kalapa is a long time. If you meet the Buddha, you meet the goddess. If you meet the goddess, you meet the Buddha. Not only that, the Buddha is the goddess is the Buddha. And not only that, the Buddha is emptiness, the goddess is bliss. The goddess is emptiness, the Buddha is bliss. And that is what and what not you are. It's true. So here comes the mantra of the goddess and the Buddha, the unsurpassed non-dual mantra. Just to say this mantra, just to hear this mantra once, just to hear one word of this mantra once, makes everything the way it truly is okay. So here it is. Earthwalker, Skywalker, hey silent one, hey great talker, not two, not one, not separate, not apart. This is the heart. Bliss is emptiness. Emptiness is bliss. Be your breath. Ah, smile. Hey, and relax. Ho, and remember this, you can't miss. Have a good evening.